I was sitting in a cold server room somewhere on the outskirts of Seattle, drinking warm cheap beer from a can, watching the player counter on our shooter cross the 980,000 mark. My hands were shaking so badly, I couldn't just hit the enter key. Heavy ventilation fans hummed all around, smelling of dust, sweat, and overheated silicon. We had reached the world stage, but I still can't wash this sticky fear off my hands, because I knew exactly what the price of this success was. My best friends. You know what it's like, right? Coming to America with just one backpack and a single obsessive idea in your head. I didn't come for the glossy American dream from the posters. I came to build a game that would make people forget how to breathe. The first few months were just a dirty basement, the smell of spilled cheap coffee on a keyboard, and eyes redder than a traffic light. My back ached like I was hauling concrete slabs. I coded for 16 hours a day, surviving on those same $1,840 I counted with coupons, just to wire money to my mom and buy instant noodles. But then you start getting used to it. You find other desperate guys just like you. We put together a 5-man team in a damp garage. We built our shooter and ran our own local tournaments just to test the weapon physics. You remember that sound, don't you? 30 people screaming with pure adrenaline in a stuffy garage, and you're standing behind the monitor realizing it actually works. The game started breathing. We hit the local scene, then the national level. It felt like just a little more push, and we'd conquer the world. I had no idea then that this euphoria would cost us absolutely everything. Our art director, Marco, had this weird habit. He would always draw weapon textures while listening to the same Joy Division track, Atmosphere, on repeat. He said that melody gave him the end-of-the-world vibe he wanted in every frame. When we playtested, he'd sit right next to me, quietly humming that tune under his breath. It seemed endearing back then. I had no idea that this little habit would become the very last thing I'd remember about him. The cracks started showing when the big investors rolled in. They didn't look you in the eye. They looked at Excel spreadsheets. They gave us an office and normal salaries, but they took our time. First, it was just crunch weeks before a milestone. Then, it was weekends. Then, you notice Marco starting to drink right at his desk because he hasn't slept in 3 days. The boss would just smile and say, "It's the price of going global." But that exact smile was the beginning of the end, even though I was still buying into the fairy tale. The point of no return hit 1 month before the global launch. The publisher called me into a meeting and said Marco didn't fit the corporate aesthetic anymore. They demanded I fire him, or they'd pull the funding. I was standing there facing a choice. Either throw the guy who painted the soul of this game out onto the street, or defy the system and lose everything. I fucked up hard. I chose the game. I signed the papers, and the sound of the pen scratching against the paper felt like the loudest noise in my entire life. But you know what the worst part is? 2 weeks after I fired him, Marco showed up at the office. He wasn't angry. He just wanted to hand me a flash drive with the final textures he'd managed to finish. And he looked at me and said, "Thanks for firing me. I was planning to leave anyway. I was burned out to the core. You saved my life." I just stood there staring at him, unable to tell if it was a joke or reality. He walked out silently, without even looking back at me a second time. We made it to the world stage. Our shooter is quoted everywhere, played by professional esports teams, but that team doesn't exist anymore. Everyone went their separate ways. Some are healing their nerves. Some have completely vanished. I got the money, the recognition, and an empty apartment with a view of the Seattle lights. This industry doesn't forgive weakness. It just grinds you down to bone meal, leaving nothing on the surface but dry profit numbers and a bitter aftertaste in your mouth. And you know what I realized? The game works perfectly. Millions of people are shooting, running, screaming with adrenaline, but I can't play it anymore. Every time I see a weapon texture, I hear "atmosphere," and I realize I betrayed a friend who was going to leave anyway. Tell me, looking right into this screen, how many times have you already sold someone out for a dream without even noticing it?